They meet again. That's a big smile from President Trump with New York's Democratic Socialist Mayor Zoran Mamdani at the White House today. The mayor brought props. On the right, the president is holding a copy of a 1975 New York Daily News front page showing then President Gerald Ford and the headline, "Ford to City Drop Dead." On the left, a mock-up of that same front page, but with the current president's photo and the words, "Trump to City, let's build." It's part of the mayor's pitch for a big federally funded housing effort that he's seeking. Back in November, the pair had another remarkably friendly Oval Office meeting. The president is suggesting the two actually had a lot in common, even though he's often falsely referred to him as a communist.
And even the new communist mayor of New York City, I think he's a nice guy, actually. Speak to him a lot. Bad policy, but nice guy.
This is the strangest pairing. David, we've all seen the Dear Leader cabinet meetings where people go around the table and basically, praise the president. He usually sits there stone-faced.
President Trump was all smiles today at the White House, meeting with New York's Democratic Socialist Mayor Zoran Mamdani in what can only be described as an odd pairing. The mayor came with props, Trump holding a 1975 New York Daily News front page featuring Gerald Ford with the headline, "Ford to City, Drop Dead," alongside a mock-up showing Trump's photo with the words, "Trump to City, let's build," all part of the mayor's push to secure federal housing funding. It's not their first unexpected encounter. Back in November, the two had a surprisingly warm meeting in the Oval Office. Trump said they had a lot in common, called him a nice guy despite often labeling him a communist, and added, "Bad policy, but nice guy." Odd doesn't quite cover it, but that's not what really deserves your attention right now. Something far more significant is unfolding in Washington, and it raises one of the most important questions anyone can ask about a sitting president. Is he physically and mentally fit to do the job? Before you dismiss this as the usual political speculation, hear this out, because what's emerging about Trump's health isn't vague or theoretical anymore.
Not that I've seen, not just a politician, even from his own party here, Anderson, but politicians around the world are trying to figure out how to manage Donald Trump and navigate that relationship, which can be really tricky at times. And here is the 34-year-old Democratic Socialist Mayor
de Blasio. I mean, I got to say, when I saw that, Gerald Ford, that classic headline, Ford to City Drop Dead, it is kind of brilliant to bring this other newspaper with a positive thing that would praise the president for building the city that, he's spent most of his life in.
It's absolutely brilliant, Anderson. What I love about this, there's a certain happy warrior reality about the way Mamdani does things. I mean, there's this beautiful audacity to go there with these mocked up headlines, no sense that that's going to seem hokey or anything, because it's exactly the language that...
Something has shifted in Washington, and it's bigger than the usual political back and forth. Elected members of Congress, with their names and reputations on the line, are now publicly linking Trump's visible health decline to formal constitutional mechanisms for removing him from office. Not anonymous sources. Not social media speculation. Congresswomen like Yasemin Ansari and Sidney Kamlager-Dove have gone on the official record calling Trump mentally ill and demanding immediate invocation of the 25th Amendment. That's a line that hasn't been crossed like this before. What triggered this escalation was viral footage from a recent September 11th commemoration. Millions watched it. Medical professionals dissected it online. The footage showed noticeable facial asymmetry on the right side, absent in past appearances, a shuffling, labored gait and slurred, garbled speech during his remarks. One expert cited by the Daily Beast in France 24 suggested the symptoms could indicate a neurological event dating back 6 months or more. Not a diagnosis, an observation based on publicly available footage, but a serious one. The White House's response made things worse. Instead of releasing comprehensive medical records or arranging an independent examination, they offered vague references to chronic venous insufficiency and thin doctor's notes that raised more questions than they answered. CNN flagged how alarmingly sparse the disclosures were. Vox published a detailed breakdown of just how little verified information exists about Trump's true physical and cognitive condition. What we know is that he takes aspirin daily, sleeps very little, avoids exercise, and maintains a diet heavy on fast food. Cardiologists and former senior health officials have publicly flagged serious concerns about stroke risk and cardiovascular health that those disclosures don't come close to addressing. When you stonewall on health transparency while viral videos are circulating showing visible symptoms, you don't suppress the story, you feed it. Human psychology fills information gaps with worst-case interpretations, and no amount of fake news dismissals changes that. If Trump truly has nothing to hide, the path forward is obvious. Release full medical records, arrange an independent examination, share the findings. The fact that they're doing the opposite sends its own message. Now let's talk about the two constitutional paths being discussed, because they're very different animals. The 25th Amendment route is effectively a non-starter politically. It requires Vice President Vance, Trump's hand-picked loyalist, to declare him incapacitated, along with a majority of Trump's own cabinet. If Trump contests it, Congress needs a two-thirds supermajority in both chambers to remove him. In today's polarized landscape, that's not happening. Constitutional experts from the Brennan Center for Justice have been clear. The 25th was designed for undeniable incapacity, not political disputes over fitness. Trying to weaponize it would likely backfire on whoever attempts it. Impeachment is a different story. That's entirely in Congress's hands. A simple House majority is all it takes to move articles forward. No cooperation from the executive branch required. House Resolution 353 is already filed, charging Trump with high crimes and misdemeanors tied to his actions regarding Venezuela and abuse of presidential power. With Republicans holding the House majority, those articles aren't moving right now. But that's exactly why 2026 matters so much. If Democrats retake the House in the midterms, and the trend lines from special elections, national polling, and fading MAGA enthusiasm are making that increasingly plausible, the entire landscape flips overnight. They could immediately launch a congressional investigation into Trump's actual health status, subpoena his medical records, compel sworn testimony from White House doctors, and expand those impeachment articles to include fitness to serve. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is playing it smart, keeping impeachment off the front burner for now, knowing swing district voters care more about cost of living and health care than political drama. But he's also leaving the door deliberately open. Republican strategists know this. That's why they're working overtime to label any health discussion as conspiracy theory before it gains mainstream traction. But those viral videos aren't going anywhere. The congressional statements are on the permanent record. The impeachment articles are drafted and waiting. And with each week that passes without real transparency, the questions get louder and the political risk grows higher. Trump and his team can keep shouting fake news at the cameras, but a 79-year-old president whose administration won't release basic health information, who posts erratic conspiracy theories between 2 and 4 in the morning, and who shows increasingly visible physical symptoms in public. That's not a story that disappears because the White House wants it to. The fuse is lit. Whether this ends in formal impeachment proceedings, a 25th Amendment push, or simply a slow erosion of public confidence in his ability to lead, one thing is certain. The conversation has crossed a threshold it cannot walk back from, and the midterms are less than 18 months away.
And that's the riff. All right. Joining me now, my very dear friend, the famed trade expert and former U.S. Trade Representative, Mr. Robert Lighthizer. Bob Lighthizer, welcome back. It's been a while. So give me your quick take. I'm sure I got many things wrong in my riff. I'm not a lawyer, but I want to hear tell me what you want to say on this one.
Well, first of all, let's remind ourselves what hasn't changed. President Trump's prescription that the old trading system has been bad has slowed economic growth for at least 30 years. It's slowed down American innovation. It's had drastic effects on our working people, on their wages, on their jobs.
Here's a twist that's genuinely hard to watch. And not just for Trump. Fox News, the network he's relied on for unwavering support, turned on him in one of the most visible ways yet. Their own legal analysts and trade law specialists sat down in front of Fox viewers and laid it out plainly. Trump's global tariff regime is in serious trouble, and the Supreme Court is gearing up to decide whether he massively overstepped his authority. They didn't sugarcoat it. They told Fox's audience that lower courts had already ruled against him. A three-judge panel from the Court of International Trade found that Trump did not have unlimited authority to impose emergency tariffs on virtually every country the United States trades with. Then the Federal Circuit upheld that ruling. Now it heads to the Supreme Court, and Fox's own experts weren't optimistic about his chances. What makes this particularly damaging is the messenger. Trump had been posting confidently on Truth Social that the Supreme Court would back him up, calling the tariffs a cornerstone of America's economic recovery. Then his most trusted network told its viewers, and by extension his base, that those claims don't hold up. That the legal foundation he's been standing on was already crumbling before the highest court even gets involved. This isn't just a legal setback. It's a narrative collapse, and it's happening in real time on the one channel he thought was safe.
One of the primary reasons for our country's stunning economic turnaround, the biggest in history, where the Dow Jones broke 50,000 4 years ahead of schedule, and the S&P hit 7,000, where it wasn't supposed to do it for many years, were tariffs. I used these tariffs, took in hundreds of billions of dollars to make great deals for our country, both economically and on a national security basis. Everything was working well. Countries that were ripping us off for decades are now paying us hundreds of billions of dollars.
Trump called the tariff case life or death for his agenda. He posted confidently on Truth Social that the Supreme Court would back him up. He painted a picture of total legal authority, emergency powers that made him untouchable on trade policy. And then his own favorite network told its viewers he was almost certainly going to lose. Fox's legal analysts and trade experts didn't spin it. They walked Fox Business viewers through exactly why the case was falling apart, that lower courts had already ruled against him decisively, that the major questions doctrine posed a serious threat to his legal theory, and that the Supreme Court was unlikely to save him. For Trump supporters who rely on Fox for their news, that was a jarring preview of what was coming. On February 20th, 2026, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 in Learning Resources Incorporated versus Trump. The decision wasn't a slap on the wrist or a procedural technicality. Chief Justice Roberts was unambiguous. The International Emergency Economic Powers Act does not give the president authority to impose tariffs. Not some tariffs. Not tariffs above a certain threshold. None. Without congressional authorization, the entire global tariff regime Trump had called Liberation Day was struck down. What made the ruling particularly devastating was who wrote it and who joined it. Roberts authored the opinion. Gorsuch and Barrett, both Trump appointees, sided with the majority. The justices he spent years boasting about putting on the bench looked at his emergency tariff theory and rejected it outright, applying the same major questions doctrine that conservatives had previously aimed at Biden-era regulations. The principle, it turns out, doesn't pick sides. When executive action reshapes the entire American economy without a single congressional vote, the court said that's beyond what any statute allows, regardless of which party is in power. Trump was the last person in his circle to accept how bad this was going to be. Fox had warned him. Lower courts had warned him. His own legal advisors knew. And yet he kept posting that the court would side with him, right up until it didn't. The practical consequences are severe. This ruling doesn't leave wiggle room. Trump can't adjust the tariff rates, retarget different countries, or reword his emergency declaration and try again. The Supreme Court has closed that door. If he wants tariffs, he needs Congress. The same Congress where enough Republicans have been quietly blocking his trade agenda because they know how politically toxic it is heading into 2026. The path he chose precisely because he couldn't get congressional support no longer exists. That's the real irony here. He went around Congress using a 1977 emergency statute because he knew he didn't have the votes. Now the Supreme Court has shut that route down, and the congressional path is no easier. He's boxed in from both directions. And this ruling doesn't stand alone. It's part of a pattern. Federal courts, including judges appointed by Republicans, have been consistently pushing back against Trump's expansive claims of executive power throughout his second term. Deportation plans blocked. Federal Reserve firings challenged, election executive orders overturned, immigration contempt rulings. And now a 6-3 Supreme Court decision, striking down his signature economic policy, with 3 of his own picks in the majority. Together, these rulings are dismantling the legal foundation his entire second-term strategy was built on. The idea that emergency powers and executive orders could substitute for congressional action whenever he couldn't get the votes. That idea is in shambles, and every future legal challenge to his executive actions will cite this ruling as precedent, making it harder for him to overreach again. Fox's coverage before the ruling said something important beyond just this one case. When the network Trump counts on to protect him from bad news instead prepares its viewers for a significant defeat, it signals something has changed. Fox has always been strategic in its support, backing him when it's defensible, being realistic when it isn't. And right now, the gap between what Trump promises his base and what he can actually deliver has grown too wide for even Fox to bridge. He can't impose the tariffs his supporters want. He can't get them through Congress. He can't count on Fox to spin the loss into a win. And he can't change what's now on the Supreme Court's record, a 6-3 decision, written by a Chief Justice he didn't appoint, joined by 2 justices he did, telling him plainly that his claimed authority never existed. No amount of Truth Social posts changes that. The legal ground he built his second term on has crumbled. And there's no version of emergency powers or executive action that puts it back together.
A bipartisan group of lawmakers is setting a new deadline for the Trump administration to update them on the release of more Jeffrey Epstein files.
Last month, President Trump signed the law requiring the Justice Department to release all unclassified records related to Epstein. That bill received overwhelming support in Congress. That happened, but now we are getting never-before-seen pictures and video of Epstein's private Caribbean island. The images and video were recorded back in 2020. House Democrats obtained these images from law enforcement authorities in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and it is that committee that released them earlier today.
NBC News senior national political reporter Sahil Kapoor is on Capitol Hill tracking this one. Sahil, first, walk us through these new images. What are they both revealing, but also explain where they came from?
Yeah, Clay, Democrats on the House Oversight Committee just released these images and videos from Jeffrey Epstein's private island that are believed to be from 2020.
Bipartisan pressure is mounting on the Trump administration over the Epstein files, and the timing couldn't be more awkward. Just last month, Trump signed a law requiring the Justice Department to release all unclassified Epstein records. The bill passed with overwhelming support from both parties. Now, lawmakers from both sides are demanding to know where that release actually stands. Adding fuel to the fire, House Democrats have just released never-before-seen footage and images of Epstein's private Caribbean island, recorded in 2020 by law enforcement in the U.S. Virgin Islands. The visuals are out there now, and they're drawing fresh attention to everything the public still hasn't been allowed to see. The irony is hard to miss. Trump ran on draining the swamp and delivering justice. He signed the Epstein disclosure law himself, and yet his own attorney general has been caught struggling, and in some cases actively working, to keep those very files under wraps. That contradiction is becoming increasingly difficult to explain away, and Congress isn't letting it go quietly.
New bipartisan frustration in Congress after the Justice Department sent a list of, quote, politically exposed persons in the millions of files related to its probes of Jeffrey Epstein. That list includes many prominent figures who appear in the files without any context, like Janis Joplin and Pope John Paul II. No one name besides Epstein and his accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell has ever been charged in connection with Epstein's crimes. Several lawmakers argue the Justice Department is intentionally muddying the waters on who was a predator versus someone simply mentioned in an email or perhaps an article.
Billionaire Tom Pritzker is stepping down as executive chairman of Hyatt Hotels over his ties to Jeffrey Epstein, saying he regrets his association with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Meanwhile, the Justice Department sent a weekend letter to Congress listing hundreds of prominent people listed in the Epstein files. But there's a but, and it's a big one. Being mentioned doesn't necessarily mean anything.
The Epstein files situation is blowing up in the Trump administration's face, and the irony couldn't be sharper. Trump signed the Epstein Files Transparency Act himself. The law is clear. All unclassified records must be released. No exceptions for political embarrassment. No carve-outs for powerful names. Yet his own attorney general has been fighting in court, in Congress, and behind closed doors to keep those very files hidden. For an administration that campaigned on draining the swamp and exposing elite corruption, the optics are catastrophic. The Justice Department's handling of this has been a disaster from start to finish. When Bondi finally released documents in February, The redactions were so heavy that legal experts called large sections practically unreadable. Critical names blacked out. Key connections obscured. Everything that could reveal who else was involved in Epstein's trafficking network, conveniently gone. And in the process of over-redacting to protect powerful individuals, her team accidentally exposed the private details of Epstein's victims, names, personal information, the people the law was specifically designed to protect. That's not a clerical error. That's a choice. Back in December, lawmakers from both parties sent Bondi a letter reminding her that embarrassing powerful people is not a legal basis for withholding evidence of crimes. That they had to send that letter at all says everything. Her response was to slow things down further, claim millions of pages were duplicates, and hide behind procedural excuses that federal judges are no longer accepting. She's been losing in court consistently, and she knows it. The congressional hearings have been painful to watch. Bondi won't make eye contact with Epstein's survivors sitting in the room. She insists everything has been released when legal experts are openly contradicting her. House Judiciary Democrats called her unhinged and accused her of covering up for sexual predators. Those are serious words from official congressional record. Meanwhile, the Justice Department released a list of politically exposed persons found in the files, a mix of names including Janis Joplin and Pope John Paul II, with zero context, no distinction between predators and people merely mentioned in passing. Legal experts immediately called it out for what it is: deliberate muddying of the waters designed to make the files look meaningless rather than explosive. Trump is reportedly furious, and he should be. His attorney general is losing in court on national television over the largest sex trafficking scandal in modern American history, while he's out there trying to project strength in law and order. Every time Bondi fumbles a hearing, loses a court filing, or makes another botched redaction, it adds another brick to a narrative his critics have been building for years, that his Justice Department isn't pursuing justice, it's running protection. And the timing couldn't be worse. Survivors are sitting in congressional hearings watching the government fail them in real time. Bipartisan pressure is building. Federal judges are rejecting the stalling tactics one by one. More documents will come out. Maybe not all at once, but enough to keep this story alive for months, with each new release scrutinized against everything Bondi has previously claimed. Connect the dots, and the picture isn't complicated. Trump socialized with Epstein. His Justice Department is fighting to keep Epstein's files hidden. His Attorney General is protecting names while accidentally exposing victims. And the law he signed himself is being ignored by the very department he controls. You can't run on law and order while covering up crimes. You can't promise transparency while hiding documents. And you can't claim to protect children while your Justice Department shields the people who exploited them. That hypocrisy has a shelf life. And right now, for Trump and Bondi, it's expiring fast.